So you ever done anything like this?
No, it's my first time. I'm really nervous.
Oh, probably got in about the worst car here.
I know.
Hey everyone, Grant from Spectre Racing. So we're back in my office after the race day to do some little post-race analysis and tell you a bit more in depth on my thoughts and comparisons between the GT and GT350. So one of the things we talked about a lot is torque and the lack of low-end torque in the GT350. But it probably wasn't the best comparison. The GT350 has more torque than my car, 374 versus about 320. But my car has a greater mechanical advantage. The final drive in my car is a 431. I actually have 410s, but with the shorter tires, it's closer to about a 431, 424. Whereas Mike's Mustang is a 373. Now, if you're not sure what that means, it's sort of like getting on a bicycle, putting it in first gear, you accelerate real quickly, versus putting it in like third gear, it takes a little bit more effort. It's sort of the same concept. My car is constantly in that lower gear, so it can get off the line quicker, but as you see in some like the older videos, like my track video here back in May, it peters out in about third gear, and you really realize then, oh, I only have 400 horsepower. Whereas Mike's car, when you got about $4,000, my lord, the power kicks in there. It's just addicting. The sound is phenomenal. So, that you can see in the comparison video in the first video, which you haven't watched it, make sure you watch it. I take off in the beginning. Partly it's because of the tires, but you can actually see towards the back end of the course where you have some more speed, Mike actually catches up a little bit. So, it goes to show you that horsepower can help in some places, but sometimes you want to have that low-end torque / mechanical advantage. Now, it can work against you, as you've seen in some of my other previous videos, where you kind of have to row back and forth between gears. And at that track, because there were so many different elements and so many cones, it was almost the average time was 80 seconds. I had to row back and forth, I think, 4 times. So, rowing back and forth 4 times and still getting a top time of a 77 must be pretty good. So, hopefully I'm doing something right. So the tires. So on my car, I'm running a Hoosier A7. It's a 315 3518, so it's almost like a 13-inch wide tire. Very, very sticky. It's a sprint compound, meaning it heats up very quickly. Whereas Mike was running a 305, I think, in the front and a 315 in the rear. I'm not sure, that might be the GT350R specs. But it's almost about the same width tire, but it's a Pilot Super Sport tire. And it's a Treadwear 300, where I'm a 40. And generally, it depends manufacturer to manufacturer. The lower the number, the stickier the tire. The Super Sports are phenomenal tires if you want to do everything. So if you only can afford one set of tires, Super Sports are a great selection. They'll last you a decent amount of miles. You can still do performance events in them, and they're fine on the street. Hoosiers, not so fine on the street. In fact, you'd be crazy to run them on the street because they have no water channels, and you'd run out of tread in about 100 miles. So, the total cost of the vehicles. So I talked about my car. Originally I bought my car, it was certified pre-owned, so it was around 18 grand. Now I dumped a considerable amount of change, like I was saying, about 20 grand. And then a lot of that is, I just track everything. So a lot of that is like consumables, tires I've already spent and gone through. It's hard to keep track, but I would say probably around 20 grand, so, $38,000 into that car for it to be a little bit faster than the GT350. Now, it doesn't have the dual use that the GT350 has, so, you're paying that extra $22,000, $25,000 for the GT350 to get that dual use of air conditioning, driving on the streets, having the different comfort modes, whereas my car is only ow, that fucking hurt mode. So you get what you pay for. And in my opinion, I like to have separate cars. I don't want to have one car that does everything. I want to have one car that does something great, and another car that does something else great. My daily driver is an Expedition. You know, Mustang's the race car. Now, eventually I do want maybe a street car, but that's going to have to come later. So one of the other cool things that I got to do is I got to drive a GT Performance Pack Mustang. Now, it was a 2016. So what it is, it's kind of in between a regular GT and GT350. It has a Torsen differential, upgraded sway bars, shocks and struts. They're great cars, and it's funny because the time my car around a 77, time in the GT350 around a 79, time in the Performance Pack 81. So nearly 2 seconds apart in each car. Now, if I spent more time in each car, I think I could get each one of them down a second or two. But we only had 4 runs that day because of the heat and because of how long the course was. So, the IRS. Now, I'm sure that'll be a question I get. You know, how does the independent rear suspension compare to the solid axle in my car? My car is an older design. It has the solid straight axle like you find in a truck. So, now I can't really answer that question, as my car has what's called a Watts link, and it's a 5-link rear end. You can see the picture right here. Now the Watts link bolts to your differential cover and holds the axle in place and doesn't allow a lot of wallowing, and generally it makes it handle more like an independent rear. Now that does change with when you have a lot of elevation changes, which we don't have here much in Florida. So, you know, we had that one hill, but it's a straight up and down hill. It's not like a curve down or a curved up. So I can't really give you a big difference in that it didn't really feel too much different. Now, when I upgraded from the panhard rod, which is just a single bar that adjusts from the body frame to your axle, to the Watts link, it made a big difference. At the time, I had a 2014 Miata as my daily driver, and my Mustang handled more like my Miata. Well, like its fat redneck cousin, but it handled more like it in that it didn't wallow around slaloms. You couldn't feel the rear end kind of coming in and out. So, and the independent rear on the GT350 and the Performance Pack Mustang felt like that. It felt very tight, handled great, and no complaints at all. I just wish I could have driven maybe, you know, my car back before I did the Watts link to do a better comparison, in that it was hard to tell, especially with all the other mods and stuff I've done to the car. So, long story short, if you still have a solid axle Mustang and you want to get into road racing, get the Watts link. If you're not doing any kind of autocross or road racing, it is a waste of money because you'll never get it out of the street. So going forward, mods to the GT350. Now, I do know that kind of sounds like heresy, but it's hard to keep a car stock. Now, unfortunately, there isn't really much you can do to the GT350. It already has a great suspension. It has a great motor. Now, you can do like some exhaust work to make it sound a little better. You're not really going to get much power. They do offer a supercharger kit, and I believe a twin turbo kit. Honestly, I think it'd be crazy to do that because you're likely to blow up the motor because it runs such high compression. It's not really what it was designed for. You'd be better off turboing and supercharging a regular Coyote motor. So, but what we can do, obviously, Mike needs better tires. The Super Sports are great daily driver tires, great kind of all-arounders. There is a tire selection, and tire selection is much more difficult at 19 inches. So there is a RE71R, which is a fantastic autocross and performance tire at that size. So we're going to recommend for Mike to upgrade to that initially to save some money. But later on, if you want to constantly run a GT350, I would believe doing something that's kind of heresy would be a better option, in that ditching the GT350's calipers, going to a smaller caliper, which would enable you to run an 18-inch wheel, because that is the limiting factor. When you switch down to an 18-inch wheel with the GT350, you open up a much better and more cost-effective wheel and tire selection. The wheel and tire selection at 19 is crazy expensive. You're talking $800 a wheel with the GT350 at 19 inches versus $400, nearly double. Same goes with the tires, much cheaper at 18 inches. Now, you wouldn't run into some problems you'd be increasing the mechanical advantage, which might not be a bad thing for Mike, because you get that imaginary low-end torque, like we were talking about earlier. And it would be it would look a little bit funky with an extra inch of wheel arch space, but, you know, I think it would be, to be able to run the car consistently and, you know, run it back and forth without having to keep spending money on those 19-inch wheels. Now you're saying, oh, you can afford a GT350, why can't I afford to spend all that money on wheels and tires? Well, that's true, so we'll have to see what Mike chooses. So as far as mods to my car, the GT, so we got the motion control suspension coming in. Now that is it's a single adjustable. I want a single adjustable due to budget. When you go from single to double, it's much more expensive, and these are upgradable to doubles later. So basically, I have one adjustment in rebound, which is tire pushing down. Compression on the MCS, from what I've heard, is pretty good. So I'm going to start off with that. That way I don't have too much adjustability to get lost in. Now I already have adjustable end links, but I have to switch to a smaller, shorter adjustable end link. I'm also upgrading new bushings, a whole bunch of different stuff, because, you know, when you upgrade one thing, you usually divert the weak point to something else, that being probably the bushings, so upgrading to front and rear low control arm poly bushings, the suspension itself, tripling my spring rate almost tripling my spring rate up front, going from a 350 to an 800. So we'll see. That's what Vorschlag recommended, but a bunch of other people recommended lower. So I'm going to start high. If it understeers, you know, doing the skating, not enough, you know, flexing the front or whatever you need for optimal grip, I'm going to go down to 650, but I figured I'd start high and kind of go low. I know a lot of people say to go low and high, but I've already honestly ordered the 800s, so they're on the way. So we're going to start with those first. So the competition for the event, as you saw right here, both Ben and Randall had borrowed cars. Ben's car is still, well, as of when I made this video, his car is done, but at the time his car was still being upgraded to a built motor, so it's going to make 550 horsepower. He kind of had a rough day like I did, plowing through a lot of elements. There were a lot of cones out there. It was the longest track I've done since I started autocrossing. So he had some trouble like I did, just plowing through elements. He's not used to that car. Obviously, he's only driven it once before at the Amelia event, which he also had trouble with. But, you know, he's going to get his car back. And, you know, I'd like to say he's going to be quicker with the extra 150 horsepower, but that's going to be a beast to handle. So we'll see how that goes. But he has been, you know, going to some of the autocross schools, which I'd highly recommend. And I think, you know, coming up next couple events, Ben will be some serious competition, especially with that car. 550 horsepower. It's going to be nuts. And we're going to be doing a dyno video with that coming up soon when it gets dynoed. So as far as Randall's car was broken as well. I think he had some kind of issue with the supercharger, so he borrowed another. I think this time it was a BRZ or an FRS. But this one wasn't supercharged, but it had a better suspension. Now, I just barely beat him by like 0.086, but that was with the cone, so yay, I beat Randall finally. It only took 4 events. So I do think, because Randall hasn't been beating me by such a huge margin lately, that with my new suspension, I think I might get back in the game here. So we'll have to see at the next event. So we got a lot coming up in the next few weeks. Now, obviously, the suspension should hopefully be here before the next event. If not, I'll figure something out. We'll either just do the event, or maybe I'll try and borrow someone else's car, do a cool video on. But we got a lot of cool stuff to do when we get the suspension on. Obviously, the install, we need some more wrenching videos on our channel. I know we don't have too many of those. You know, we got to do how to set the ride height with coilovers. That'd be a cool, interesting video. How to do corner balancing. I have a friend with scales, so we're going to go over there, put the car on the scales, and see, you know, what's involved in corner balancing a car with coilovers. Obviously, all the alignment that goes into the car, it's going to be pretty tricky. I'm going to have much more adjustability, so hopefully I won't get lost in that. And then, you know, doing the actual first event with the car. And what I'd like to do, and what I'm planning to do, is doing a Pro versus Joe challenge. So I'm getting a pro driver who used to drive a Mustang, an SN95 Mustang in street mod a long time ago. And he's got experience dialing in coilovers. So we're going to do a friendly competition, Pro versus Joe. And he's going to help me dial in the coilovers to try and get them, you know, optimally for autocross. So coming up this fall, we have a lot of cool stuff coming up. Like I said, we got Ben's dyno video. That's going to be part one of a, you know, multi-part series. We're going to be doing a track day and all that kind of stuff. Autocross with Ben. Now, also coming up soon, if you watch the Porsche video where we took Cayenne off-roading, that was a ton of fun. And, you know, it's funny because some of the comments we got were, oh, that's not real off-roading, you know, because we were just going through mud pits and stuff. So we found a location called Hard Rock in Ocala, Florida. It had hill climbing, rock crawling, mud pits, all sorts of things. Looking at pictures online, it does not look like Florida. So I challenged the local Jeep club here, and we're going to do a Porsche versus Jeep challenge. So, you know, Ash come out there, we'll have the Jeeps come out, have the Jeep go through a hill climb, and then see if Ash can do it, and hopefully it won't roll down the hill, or some, you know, stupid German part will break instantly. So it should be a ton of fun. We got a lot of other stuff coming up this fall, so make sure to tune in. And you got any questions, any suggestions, anything, come join us on our Facebook forum. You know, want to get into racing, we got a lot of great people that can help you out. So thanks again for watching. See you next time.